we might get started. There might be a few people still trickling in, but yeah, we'll get started. So welcome to the first session for Intersect 2021 in the Mayfair room. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, traditional custodians on the land which we're meeting today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Rachel Hopping. My role outside of being here at Intersect is to lead the marketing efforts for Superhero, which is a new share trading platform that allows Aussies to invest for $5 a trade. Over the next 2 days, I'll be the host of this room as we hear from our speakers around all the amazing innovation happening in the Australian FinTech space. I'm sure you can agree, and that's why we all work in FinTech. There's no more exciting place to be right now. And what a better way to kick things off than with a session on one of the most hot and widely talked about investment areas at the moment, which is crypto. This area of investment has blown up beyond just the fintech space, and it seems like everyone, their mum, their grandma, and their auntie's niece is talking about crypto at the moment. So in this session, Tommy Honan from Swyftx will talk about how Swyftx have changed the crypto investing landscape for Australians by aggregating and simplifying international markets while providing a larger range of on-ramp fiat options than any other Australian exchange. Moderating this session, we have Tsen from Cash. Alan is an investor in early-stage fintech startups. He's focused on finding companies solving big problems in B2B fintech. Alan is also currently the Deputy Chairperson of FinTech Australia, where he has led numerous submissions to government departments on digital currency and blockchain tech. So welcome, Tommy and Alan.
Thanks everyone for coming along this morning. Nice and early for the first session of the day in this room. Today I'm joined by Tommy, and Tommy's intro, I think, speaks to the work you guys are doing at Swyftx. But Tommy, I always like to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I used to say before, when Twitter was 140 characters, keep it to 140, but Twitter's extended that, so you've got a few more characters. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you get up to at Swyftx.
Keeping it to the character size is going to be probably hard for me because, as people probably know already by now, with my Irish accent, it's I tend to ramble a little bit, so I'll try and keep it as short as I can. But yeah, my background essentially been involved in financial markets and investing pretty much since I was legally allowed to back in Ireland. Moved to Australia about 10 years ago, continued in the space, got heavily invested in cryptocurrencies and a testament to Superhero as well. Those type of apps I always had a drive to those type of investing apps and that type of fintech. Essentially found Swyftx just as a trader myself about 2.5 years ago. The two guys that own Swyftx were essentially starting to launch the platform. They were starting to get things going in that regard. I came in as a customer, so I was actually the first employee at Swyftx. So that's been kind of my journey along the way, and obviously been involved in cryptocurrency since kind of 2013 and 14. Had quite a bit of knowledge that not a lot of people have in the space, being quite a new industry.
So do you remember the first time you heard about, I assume it was Bitcoin, do you remember the first time you heard about it? What was the thing that got you interested in this space? I'm always keen to hear sort of the sort of origin story behind every investor in the space, because they've always got an interesting story behind how they got into the space. What was it for you?
Yeah, I have to blame my cousin, who's an MD for Dell Computers. It was one of the first Christmases I went back after moving to Australia. And Melbourne. I was actually in Melbourne for 10 of those years. And I live in Brisbane now, which is where Swyftx is based. But yeah, essentially went back for the first Christmas, and my cousin, who's, like I said, was working for Dell as an MD for many years, he was talking to me about this Bitcoin, and had heard about it, but maybe started to creep into the movies and things like that. But yeah, pretty much it was him that kind of opened my eyes to it, and I kind of dismissed it. I think as I'm quite a, I guess I didn't believe in it at first. It was kind of something that it's kind of hard to grasp. Very quite new, and yeah, from there just I guess started gaining interest in 2013, 14. Yeah, started to really have a look a little bit closer, I guess.
Cool. So as most people have probably seen, the market has been on a tear and it's pulled back a little bit since. What do you think's going on in the space? What's your view as to why the market's been on a tear and maybe why it's pulled back a bit? Yeah, do you have any thoughts or even what you're seeing at Swyftx?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, I think, and a lot of the cryptocurrency exchanges and companies that are involved in Intersect will be similar, but we've, at Swyftx, we did start quite small, so we've seen like 100x growth across almost everything. Customer base, trading volumes, our employees, our staff, just huge growth across the board. It's there's not one element that you can actually put your finger on. That having the COVID obviously was a catalyst. I guess just the time in the market for cryptos. They've been around now since Bitcoin 2009. So it's longevity now. It's starting to prove. It's proven itself over time as that store of value, and it has been one of the best performing asset for over that time. You've got that coupled with that kind of validation that crypto is getting is it's very exciting. I mean, we're all here today for different reasons, but that is one of the catalysts of a driver of FinTech in every country, not just Australia. And the institutional side getting involved is a major factor as well. And the validation over time is something that these institutional investors look for. They don't want something that's going to come up in a year or two and then collapse kind of thing. That was what everybody thought was going to happen initially, and it went through those couple of cycles. But every year that passes, every month that passes is good for our space. And I just think blockchain and FinTech is kind of just plays into that field as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when Bitcoin went from, I think it was $30 to $2, or no, it was like maybe 10 cents actually. There was a dramatic drop the first time around, and I remember a lot of people saying, that's it, it's done. This is back in 14, I think, or 15, whenever it was. But it's been interesting to see it go through these peaks and valleys, and we're sort of going through one at the moment. But interestingly, I think this time around, we've seen a number of sort of strange things happen. So I think the thing that comes to mind most people have seen is Dogecoin rising and then falling a bit and then sort of rising again. And we've just recently seen, obviously, the fall in Bitcoin. I think there's sort of this view that some of these worthless coins are sort of being driven by market speculation, or maybe even people sort of pumping it, certain famous people who have electric car companies. What are your thoughts around some of these valueless, again, what people would sort of term valueless coins? What are your thoughts on that, and what are you seeing at Swyftx around some of those volumes and some of these, like your Doge coins of the world? What are you seeing happening?
Well, as much as we try and protect people, you don't want to give people assets that are going to pump and dump kind of, it's a phrase commonly used in crypto. When it comes to Dogecoin's been around for a long time. Obviously, it's got the Elon Musk connection, which everybody's kind of hearing about. It's in the news. He tweets good one day, he tweets bad the next day. It's just another day in crypto, essentially. And that's what I think people that are in the industry will realize that a lot more than somebody that's maybe got in last month or something like that, or looking at these meme coins. And it shows the power of memes. Yeah. It's as much as as a joke, and it's it was tokenized. It was put on the blockchain. It's given value only by the people that like memes and people that give it that value and trade it. So it's, how do you put value on anything? I mean, if I threw $50 here up in the air, by the time it hits the ground, it's only worth 48. So it's like anything. I mean, that's the argument, I guess, for your inflation argument, and it all plays into more regulated cryptos. I guess more. That's why there is only Bitcoin when it comes to cryptos. There is only Bitcoin. It does stand alone in what it actually means and what it values, but that doesn't mean there's only going to be one crypto. There's thousands of them now, but there are cryptos that are solving real world problems, and that's something that's really, really important as well. And the technology just needs to be not abused. It needs to be used for benefit and to solve those world problems.
So I think what's interesting about it is, I totally agree with the arguments around, inflation and sort of supply and demand. But do you think it's sort of healthy for the industry that we're sort of seeing this? I think, if I think back to the ICO boom, for example, I think in some ways that did a bit of damage to the space. And sort of now we're just really recovering from that. Now we're seeing a different type of run on, for example, NFTs and some meme coins. I don't know, how do you feel about sort of how meme coins and, even ICOs, if we think back to, a few years ago, do you think it's healthy for the industry, and sort of how do you frame that and think about that?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it does drive adoption in the industry.
Yeah.
So that's the main benefit, is adoption. I think what you're going to see is people come in, kind of specific to our platform, but we have like a demo trading mode on our platform, so you can come in, set up your account, don't have to put any money in, and we actually stress to a lot of people that are new, don't put money in until you learn how the mechanism works. But in that run, it means people can actually get in, they can look at their meme coins, but what they do is they're learning along the way. So it's kind of in that way, the attraction of the meme coins gets them in, gets them interested, and potentially upskills them into projects that are, have longevity, that can actually help them achieve, financial freedom or whatever people are trying to do, essentially, and they can find themselves into a lot better investments, via the channel of these types of coins. So, I think overall, I would say it's positive in terms of the adoption, but still, it is kind of just the fact that it's based on a meme, a little bit concerning.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, right? Which is you see, adoption, and you see a light being shined on the industry broadly. I think, we'll see where it lands. For the industry, I think, again, sort of the ICO boom was an interesting one. Just some learnings that people have had from that is that, probably on the whole, good. It brings people in and sort of has funded projects, and that's the other thing, right?
Yep.
A lot of projects were funded through the ICO boom, which is good. So changing gears for a moment, we've sort of spoken a bit about speculation in the space, but there's other stuff that's going on, obviously, really interesting stuff in the space, and I think, the noise of your Dogecoins, etc., sort of sometimes drown that out. What do you think is under discussed, or what are people missing in the space that's really interesting at the moment?
I'll probably give you a case kind of close to me.
Yep.
I've always been interested in, no matter what I was doing in my life, how can I earn money while I'm asleep? And it's a term that's kind of thrown around a lot by people. Decentralized finance. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's spoken about as such, but it's kind of, a lot of people don't understand exactly the powers of it and what it can actually do. And a lot of us are still learning. I'm still learning. I'm sure you are as well. Sure. Because the space changes so quickly, and new projects pop up, new mechanisms pop up, new networks are coming up and getting launched every day. What people I think don't remember, or maybe some people don't know, is you don't actually have to be exposed to a fluctuating cryptocurrency coin to earn like passive income. There's platforms now like Nexo Finance. There's platforms like Celsius. Essentially, they are crypto wallets that pay a dividend, right? So everyone, people, you got to talk about the banks now, and your, interest rates and all these things are, they're going the wrong way in one direction, and the other way they're going the right direction for people. So it's that's something I think that a lot of people don't understand, is you can essentially be exposed to the likes of as a use case, an Australian dollar cryptocurrency that can earn you, 8 to 10% through a decentralized finance mechanism. Because a lot of people think about crypto, they're like, oh no, I couldn't deal with the fluctuation and all this. So that's one thing I think people don't know about, and the fact that you don't have to buy full units of any one coin. Yeah. That's another point that a lot of people do forget. They're like, Bitcoin is 50,000 US. I don't want to spend that much money, kind of thing. Yeah. But the decentralized finance thing is pretty big. The fact that you can actually get those type of returns in like an FDIC insured institution is pretty big, and as more people realize that's only going to be good for the space as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think in the DeFi space we're seeing not only automated market makers that are sort of paying essentially a rate, an interest rate for people to put money into their market maker, but we're also seeing beyond DeFi even some of the more enterprise level blockchain work that's going on. We're obviously stable coins. There's a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. Anything in particular, I don't know, a project or anything that sticks out to you as something you're watching or keeping an eye on at the moment?
I know you mentioned it before, but I think the NFT space is really fascinating. When I think about NFTs, I didn't fully understand it. I'm still learning about it as well, but I didn't fully understand where it could actually go. But when you see things like artists, musicians, putting their albums on NFTs, covers, tweets, it's just, the possibilities are endless with it. That for me is a really, really interesting space and I think it's one that will have longevity. It just reminds me of people collecting football cards or basketball cards. These things were worth millions and millions of dollars, 20 years later. So that's I guess that's where I see a space that really could flourish. That's ahead of us essentially, and it can only, as more regulation come in and people start to get more comfortable with it, it's only going to be more widely adopted.
Yeah, it's a super interesting space, right? Because I think for the longest time, when we think of digital goods, we think of abundance, but NFTs have flipped the switch where all of a sudden you create scarcity around a digital good, which I think is an interesting framework for a lot of these things to now be looked at. So music, again, sort of in a world of music abundance, now having some digital rarity around it is an interesting mechanism. So switching gears again, like thinking through exchanges. For the longest time, exchanges have been sort of the center of the universe for crypto, and a lot of, I think, crypto projects sort of swing around this centerpiece of the industry because obviously they're the on-ramps and off-ramps for a lot of people. One thing that's interesting to me is that for the longest time, I think most people have thought that crypto exchanges are, quite, how do I put it? Quite similar in what they do. But now I start to see quite a few try to differentiate and do different things. Do you think it's possible to differentiate as an exchange? And what are you guys doing out at Swyftx around sort of trying to be different in market? Because it is quite crowded.
Yeah, we came in, I think we were like number 8 or number 9 in the market in Australia when we launched. The gap was there. The problem was there to be solved. That potentially should have been closed already, but it wasn't. So, for us, the most simple of all, we stripped it back down to customer service. Yes, we probably do very similar things to what every other exchange does. What we have focused on and what I would attribute to one of the main growth factors of Swyftx is we've just stripped it back to customer service. We are available for customers. Our times used to be within 3 to 5 minutes. Scale that up a little bit more now, so it's gone back a bit. But we're still, that's something that we're committed to. It is hard to differentiate with exchanges at times. That would be the main point of difference, I would say, from some exchanges. For instance, you think about Binance, obviously they're the 60% market share in crypto or something like that at the moment. You're waiting 12 days if you have a problem with Binance or something like that. Around those numbers, crypto.com. Customer service never gets old. If you can do that right, and obviously you still have to have a good app and a good service and good prices. All those things are kind of a given. But if you're looking at something that's going to be a point of difference, why is your dad going to go in and want to trade in Swyftx? Why am I telling someone that doesn't know much about crypto to go to Swyftx? And the reasons are, if you have questions, if you have problems, it might not be a problem, it might just be a question, but people see it as a problem. You're going to have somebody that can answer that question, and that's a real something that a lot of tech companies, I think it's starting to come back, but I think maybe in years gone, people kind of went away from that. Everything is automated. You can talk to bots and you can get AI to do, tie your shoes for you these days. I don't have laces, but if I did. But essentially, that's what we've stripped it back to, as well as using market makers, and we've got our brokerage essentially does strip the best prices as well. not to focus on Swyftx so much. Sorry, guys, but essentially that's what I would attribute to a main point of difference between exchanges.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Because they're quite. I think externally, price is a big driver, and then it's not until you use an exchange that you sort of go, oh, okay, there's other things that really matter, like being able to contact someone and being able to figure out, where is the money, like where is it moving from, is it there yet? So it's quite interesting to see exchanges trying to differentiate on different vectors more than just the coin offering, and the price. So what's next for exchanges? Obviously, I sort of mentioned before, automated market makers. We're seeing more DEXs come out. What do you think the future looks like for exchanges, or what are we going to see over the next couple of years?
I would say regulation is gonna come in a lot heavier than it is. I mean, we are heavily regulated, but there needs to be like a standard globally, which is probably gonna, I guess, in our opinion, it's probably gonna weed out some of the players that aren't doing things absolutely correctly. Those standards need to be risen if we are serious, and I know we are, and I know the crypto businesses involved in this in Intersect are as well, very serious about this being an industry that has longevity. It needs to be properly regulated, and I know the team at FinTech Australia, these guys are doing amazing work, to help that regulation come through, and working closely with the government. So, for exchanges, I guess specific to Australia, it's definitely going to be around regulation and how that actually gets managed. It's going to be very, very important. There's also, you talked about the market makers. I presume you're talking about like Uniswap and these type of exchanges. So that's you think about your DEXs and your SEXs, your centralized exchanges. Decentralized exchanges, for me, potentially have a lifespan, because as this regulation tightens up, governments don't like to know about, they need to know where people's money is going, and they need to be protected. And there's a lot of elements that plays into why DEXs are potentially not going to be favoured upon by regulators. Yeah,
it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see from a regulatory perspective where we go with DEXs. I think there's probably there's probably going to be a few issues that they face, totally. So before we throw to questions from the audience, I want to ask you, what do you think is going to change over the next 5 years in the industry, and what do you think is going to stay the same? It could be exchanges, whatever sort of angle you want to take on it. I think it's, in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot change, but I think at the same time, at its core, for example, Bitcoin is still here and is still the biggest coin. I don't know, what do you think is going to change, and what's staying the same?
I think probably what you're going to see change is the attitude towards crypto. I think it's already starting to shift. The attitude from governments, banking institutions is a big one. It's something that even in 2021, crypto businesses still struggle with maintaining banking relationships. That won't be the first time that people hear about that over the next couple of days. But essentially, that's something that's going to change largely. There's some amazing initiatives by other countries and governments around custody of crypto. Essentially, making that available to users of banks and things like that. So I think crypto custody is going to be a very big one, because it just protects people as well. It just sounds good, and it is something that's going to change. What's going to stay the same? I think crypto exchanges, like you said, it's a bit of an obvious one. I think what you're probably going to see is, as this regulation comes up, you're going to see larger crypto exchanges. So very much hoping that we're going to be one of those large crypto exchanges that lasts over time. And I guess similar to what you see with super funds, where you have compiling funds join each other, and you might see that with exchanges as well. That's potentially what I could see happening. It stays the same, but it does there is a little bit of change there in that 5-year plan.
One last one, which I always ask every time I do a fireside chat or a panel, which is sort of the contrarian question. What do you believe in this space that few other people agree with you on? Do you have a contrarian view at all about what's happening in the space?
I do have a view on that. It's I guess it goes back to the banking, really the banking side of it. The fact that it's still hard to get banking for crypto businesses in 2021. It still kind of amazes me. What a lot of people don't believe that I believe is we're pretty close to turning the screw on that.
Yeah.
Banks are going to be actively seeking partnerships with businesses. And I don't think a lot of people think that we're quite there yet. We think we're quite a while away. But I think the whole narrative playing towards crypto custody, kind of like what I mentioned in the last point, I think it's something that I think it's a natural progression. Banks do not like losing out on money, especially when it's coming through something that they don't have any control or limited control over. So what they're going to do is join that party, and that comes with what that also brings is more trust in the space, and there's a lot of good things that it brings. A lot of people don't agree with me on that point, that the banks are about to come to the party, but that would be my kind of contrarian view, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. Speaking to banks like fairly regularly about banking in a few different markets, it'll be interesting to see how quickly they turn the ship. It seems to me like most of them, especially when it comes to banking, what is perceived as high-risk customers, they're a big ship with a small rudder. So I hope that that's the case, because we're trying to open a few markets ourselves and offer crypto in a few markets. But yeah, we'll see.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to throw to the crowd. Any questions? I think, is there a mic going around? Yep, there's a mic. Yeah, go for it. Any questions? Talking points? Anything?
Hi, how you doing? It's Jerry Parker. I've been investing in crypto for a little while now, and we're in a big bull market. It's going up. And what do you see where's that black swan that's going to come and take us back to the bear market? Do you think it's coming sooner, or what do you think it will be? And then also, how do you think it compares to, say, the 2000 .com boom? That had a boom and bust, a lot of promise, a lot of speculation this is gonna change the world. Do you see any corollary there with this in the crypto space?
Yeah, it's I guess it's in terms of where we're at with the market. I mean, we've had 4 of these cycles already, so it's kind of like we do have a little bit of a history to go by. You see these bull runs tend to last for kind of 18 months. So I guess you could say that we started in March after the COVID crash, potentially even before that. We had a bit of a run up. Nobody really knows. I guess history would tell you that potentially we've got maybe a couple of years. So I mean, we're a year and a half into it. So you guys can do the maths from there. It's really, I think, compared to previous cycles, it's not on an equal playing field, because it's so much more widely adopted. The narrative around crypto in 2017 for the last run was nowhere near what it is now. People can get in and invest in crypto with fiat on-ramps in 5 minutes now. Back in 2017, I can't remember what the exchange was that I opened an account with. It took me 3.5 weeks to get verified. So the access is so much different to what it used to be. Back even just like 4 years ago. I mean, it just came on so much in that time. What do you reckon, Alan?
I think every time we have a market correction, the follow to that is that we have a step change in terms of not only knowledge, the amount of people in the space, but then also just the, I think, momentum. So when we see it, for example, Bitcoin is the coin that we sort of know the best in terms of what happens after a market fall, and it seems to rebase every time at a completely new and crazy level. Like, I remember when I was at a meetup, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we were talking about the fact, wouldn't it be crazy if Bitcoin got to $1,000, right? And now it's, whatever it's at, 40, 50, whatever it's at today. It just seems to create momentum, and every time we have a new run, it seems to be for a different reason. I think that's even more interesting, right? This time, as Tommy said, a lot of institutional interest is coming behind Bitcoin specifically, but then I think more broadly with NFTs, it's a little bit more mainstream this time. Whereas with ICOs, it was still a little bit nerdy and a little bit, in some parts, dubious as to why people were entering the market. But this time we're seeing, I think, one, sophistication at a new level, then two, just the volumes are completely different. Another cut on it is like when we saw the bust last, I'm sure a lot of, your example of the .com bust, we saw companies go bust, but also in that cycle we saw Amazon being built, right? And so I think that that's the same thing that we're seeing, right? Which is, sure, projects fall away, but the strongest, most innovative stuff is still here and is growing bigger and stronger.
Just a quick one on intrinsic value in coins. So there's a lot of coins out there, and there's a vacuum of intrinsic value with them. But there is some that are starting to develop some intrinsic value with institutional investment in Bitcoin, for example. Do you have a sort of a view on where some more intrinsic value is going to come into play with some of these markets?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I guess the institutional investors coming in, the intrinsic value in Bitcoin essentially is coming from a lot from these type of investors coming into the space. You've got self-managed super funds. The people that invest through self-managed super funds now, which is coming quite prevalent, we're seeing it, and I'm sure a lot of the other exchanges are seeing it, is these people are not coming in for a short-term, growth. They are, but they're not coming in for something to invest in for a year and then kind of get out of it. So it's it just adds, I guess, to that value around crypto and Bitcoin. Yeah.
Cool. We might call it there. But thank you, Tommy, for joining me today. It was a really interesting conversation. I'm endlessly curious about what's happening in the crypto investing space. But thanks so much for joining me. Thank you for your questions, everyone. And we'll call it there. Thanks a lot, Tommy.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tommy and Alan. It was great to hear more about crypto. I remember having a conversation last week at a dinner